optimally, where do you want the team? Over here? You want them over here on chairs? Right there?
Yep.
Are you guys comfortable here?
Sure. Yeah.
You want chairs over here?
Absolutely.
You want chairs?
No,
Sorry.
sorry.
No.
Let's roll. Thank you. And you know, this is a topic near and dear to my heart as well too, because I think that's one of the things that I've always been faced with, and especially more and more so nowadays. You know, I think back to my university experience. I studied at Laurentian University way up in northern Ontario, and so it's in the Sudbury area. And I used to code on a VAX. I don't know if anybody remembers, like a central computer system, right? I wasn't as bad as putting cards into the system, right? I'm not going to say that you were, but we were close, right? Like, I mean, I just literally passed by a couple of years. But we were only coding on, and so I used to code, right, in SPSS. It was actually, SPSS was a language, or it was a language used for statistics. And now I think I also have a teaching assignment right now at a local college, right, where I teach at the Big Data and Analytics program. And I teach the fundamentals of data and analytics, like mathematics, first kind of year statistics kind of stuff. And then they say, well, why don't you teach us in Python or pick a language? Or why don't you teach us in SAS? Well, because there's like about 20 different ways of being able to teach or to do some kind of an analysis. And the truth is, hitting the button, and so I teach in Excel, that's the funniest part, because like 90% of what I want the kids to understand in terms of the fundamentals of analytics can be done with the little data tab, the little data drop-down thing that we have in Excel. And so I kind of chuckle to myself, because I think that's where learning how to code is one thing, and absolutely it's an expertise, not no disrespect to the coder on the team up here today, but the thing is, it's not the only part of analytics, right? And then the thing is, you can't do any of these three things. So we're going to give you scenarios today talking about, what's the role of a coder, right? What's the role of a statistician, and then what's the role of various business units. So, and I think the scenario was that the DAC is looking for kind of a platform, and we're going through this right now. It's a real live example that we're going through right now, so we'll be able to give you some very meaningful kind of feedback and results as to how we're doing. And it's a landscape assessment of the different technologies that we have. We've got the skills, we've got the expertise, we've got the tools. How do we bring it together, right, to help our organization make sense? One of the things I've recognized is that through my career, and I've had the opportunity to work for a lot of large organizations, and a lot of different. So 25 years, bulk of it was spent in the hospital system in Ontario, right, in various different government agencies. And then I did do some work with AWS and as well as IQVIA, but most recently 2 years at Johnson & Johnson, leading the Data and Analytics Center. And I think back to my career progression and the earlier on days, was that, we started off with, there was never enough data. Like, we were like trying to find the data, trying to get it in a timely fashion, trying to get it clean, trying to make sense of it. To the point now is we're overwhelmed with data. There's so much data. How do we make sense of it all? And then I think I've also saw this spectrum of this full-serve analytics versus self-serve analytics. Everyone's like, oh, if we build a dashboard, right, or if we build a portal, and then people will just go in there and they're going to pull all the data themselves. Well, the truth is, it's not going to happen, right? I went through a revision at the hospital. We had to rewrite a bunch of, I'm going to date myself, crystal reports. And there was 13,000 different crystal reports the hospital was using, because every time somebody needed a piece of information or data, they would ask for a new crystal report to be built. It's probably not the best strategy. So when we had to redo all these different crystal reports as we were upgrading to a new version, I asked my team to audit what was the utilization, right, of these different reports. Take a guess. How many of the 13,000 different reports were being used on a consistent basis? Anybody? Couple hundred? 20? So we got a spectrum there, but right in the middle, right? It was about 125, 130 different reports. So we got rid of about 14,000. By the way, guys, this is going to be the challenge for us next year, like looking at our data environment. I'm going to say, how can we clean it up and stuff like that. So it's really interesting, right? But and what I saw was there was another time where we adopted this Cognos BI tool, which was this whole self-service BI tool. It went down 1 month, and so it happened to be at Christmas time. So I went around with all these directors of the hospital, and I had my team sit with them because my team could still access the data. They created the report, went in, sat with the director, got the feedback from the director, brought it back, we amalgamated it all, brought it to the CFO. CFO says, this is the best financial report I've seen from this organization in the last 2 years. The director's experience was, that was the best experience we've ever had, because we didn't have to go into the silly BI tool, we didn't have to remember our password, we didn't have to remember all these different things, and we were able to really have a good conversation with this. So I made a really tough decision. You heard me mention earlier, learning how to fail fast, right? Made a tough decision to say, hey, you know what, we don't need this BI tool, let's get rid of it, and we did. So let me introduce the experts here today. So first of all, we have Ade, we've got Josh, we've got Ronak. I'll ask you each to give a brief definition of your role and your background and experience, and then the role that you'll be playing today.
Yep, sure.
Turn it over to you, Ade.
Thank you. So my name is Ade. I'm a data and analytics manager at Johnson & Johnson. I've been with the organization now for about 4 years, just coming up on 4 years. My role today is to model for you guys what a coder might do or how a coder might use this platform that we're trying to implement that will allow coders and statisticians and business users to collaborate in the same space.
Let's go to Josh.
Hey everybody, my name is Josh Purification. So I'm currently at the Data Analytics Center. I am the manager of AI, ML, and forecasting. I've been with the organization for 10, 11 years now. I'm happy to be here, and my role today is really portraying to our role as a statistician or an analyst, and really seeing how we can generate and test hypotheses in our models today.
Hi everyone, I'm Ronak Maini. I'm the manager data analytics infrastructure at J&J. I've been with J&J for about 10 years now. The role that I would be playing is of a business user, though I'm not a business user in my day-to-day life, but I work with these stakeholders a lot. So I would provide the context from their lens. Yeah.
Perfect, right. And then so we'll give you a little bit about our experience, right? So right now, like I said, we're assessing, we've got a big project going on around forecasting, right? We're thinking about new and innovative ways. It's called Jiffy, so it's Johnson & Johnson's Innovative Forecasting Initiative. And thinking about, we're taking a role that marketers used to do on a very consistent basis in Excel. That's okay. I love Excel. And so they do it in Excel, right? And they have their financial or their forecast model. And we're saying, for a lot of these things, the forecast could be simplified. It could be easier. But then all of a sudden we're going to be saying to the marketer, hey, you don't need this thing that you've been doing forever for the last 10 years and you're staking your career on, you don't need to do that anymore because we just created an AI model that'll just do that for you. So what is that person thinking and what does that mean, right? And how do we get them to adopt this? How do we get them to trust the model that we're going to be able to create, right? And so we're going to walk you through. And so that's where all these different aspects of what each one of our colleagues is going to speak to is an essential kind of pillar or a persona. And maybe we'll talk a little bit about how we develop the personas as well, too. So we'll go on. So first we have Ade.
Yep, absolutely. So in thinking about the first persona that we came up with, which is the persona of a coder, this individual would be what you might consider a data scientist, a machine learning engineer, and their primary responsibility is to get requirements from the business or from the statistician, as you hear in a few minutes, and get access to raw data. And the goal here is to develop algorithms that can essentially provide insights within the data for the statisticians or end users. Coders are important because they are sort of on the ground level, working directly with the raw data, transforming exactly what's in the data into insights. A lot of times the coders don't have visibility into the overall strategy of the organization, into the overall strategy of the team. And so this platform, as we envision it, is one that's going to allow them to, as they work with the raw data, to be able to interact with the statisticians and the business users in real time, so that what they're developing is fit for purpose for what the overall strategy of the organization or team is. So what do coders do? They're proficient in programming, Python, R, Linux, whatever programming language you have. They typically work in silos, which is they get the requirements, they get the data, and their job is to go in and just heads down, cleaning data, working on models. They also try to generate what we call actionable insights. So basically whatever patterns they see in the data, really try to communicate that and explain that to the business partners. And once all that's done, we've found in our experience that they are very, very good at pulling out those insights. But again, because of that lack of connection to what the business is trying to do, maybe not being able to communicate effectively where those insights or how those insights can drive strategy or drive the outcomes. And so we hope this platform will allow them to get a bit more visibility to the end goal, and that's where the coders sit in this dynamic.
Perfect, thanks. Next we'll hear from a statistician.
Sure. As a role of a statistician or even an analyst in the company, so you're essentially the translator between really the coder and the business user. You're the person who really understands these predictive models. You're proficient in visualizing and really understanding that story that the coder wants to tell and really wants to convey to that business. And then I need that to ensure that for the business user, you can provide that data-driven business strategy. That at the end of the day, you can be successful in pretty much you're future-proofing your business strategy. So in terms of finding your weapon, like your tool, this is what I just mentioned, we want that platform to really use it up. So this needs to balance our visual workflows and code-based flexibility. We want optimal collaboration between our two personas. That's good. You're really right smack in the middle of those two. You need the tool to support automations, versioning, and that data storytelling. Going back to that main thing I mentioned, we want that data storytelling. And lastly, you want these personas to work together, even within multiple regions, multiple areas. And you want to have governance, scalability, and then, of course, we want interoperability. Because at the end of the day, someone's going to ask for an Excel spreadsheet. So you never know.
Fair enough. Okay, and then finally we'll hear from the business users.
Great. So when it comes to business users, their most critical persona in terms of a data building infrastructure or a data-driven culture that you want to build in. What happens is like, if you traditionally describe like what a business user is, they are domain experts. Sorry. Yeah. So they're domain experts in their own functional areas, whether it's a marketer, sales, supply chain, access, any of these departments. Like they are decision makers. They need data to drive decisions. And I would say that they qualify as someone who needs insights without the complexity that is involved in it. So when you talk about bridging the gap between coders, non-coders, what role like a business user plays is that is to drive this gap of these silos between the three personas that we're talking about today is key. Because any kind of feedback that comes through these business users is so critical in terms of feeding it back to any kind of complicated model that we are building in. So that's pretty crucial in terms of having a well-rounded profile or solution that you're currently building. Like one of the things is around hypotheses testing that we currently do as business users. And the insights that we derive are so important to track back to what we are doing with a statistician or with a coder in terms of a data scientist there. Right, at J&J, when we talk about, Jonathan mentioned about the Jiffy forecast model here, one of the areas that we wanted to focus on is how we involve these business users in terms of owning the models. So what we've looked at is when we're developing a forecast through an AI/ML process, these are patient models, very complicated to use. What we could do for business users is give them control in terms of a tool that allows them to do the scenario planning, for them to, engage with the models, provide those assumptions, market inputs at every point of the time. And that basically really helped us in terms of having a good solution in place. So what's important is to involve, as part of the collaboration, these business users right from the inception to every stage in the process, right till the end, because that really is an important aspect of collaboration to solve this. And lastly, I would say is that when you're investing in any kind of tool, just think about this user from a coder and non-coder perspective in terms of how you can bring this user in for a solution. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think as we went through this process, that was kind of my observation, right? Is we can't do this forecast initiative with, so if I had just a bunch of coders doing it, they'd be able to develop these great models, right? But we wouldn't necessarily know that the models were accurate, right? Yeah. And I think so if I got the statistician to do it, he'd be able to develop a whole bunch of great models. They'd be highly accurate, but they wouldn't necessarily be sustainable or repeatable, right? Because he's going to build them in his one-off environment within say an SPSS or a SAS and stuff like that. And then both of these things, so even if we were to do that, again, how do we know the model? Like people are going to use the model. I think that's the biggest fallacy that I've ever seen within data and analytics is we need to be able to demonstrate our value to the organization. Our organization invests a lot of money in data and analytics. We spend millions of dollars procuring data, right, from various organizations. And the thing is, we need to be able to make that value of that organization and bring it back to the end user. You probably heard me say that in other talks today as well too. We have to demonstrate our value to the organization, otherwise why are we doing that? And it's the simple answer is not necessarily, well, let's just build a dashboard, right? Or let's just build another model and things like that. So I think that's the biggest learning that I had through this process. And maybe we could talk about some of the tools that we've investigated, but was that, yeah, we really spent time. And I can't remember if it was an outside resource or an inside resource that said, hey, you know what, really, let's develop these personas, right? But that's where we found the biggest value was spending time saying, who is our stakeholders in this process? And recognizing that each stakeholder is actually independent, but not mutually exclusive, right?
Yep.
Let's talk about some of the tools that we've looked at.
Yeah, so I think when we talk about a traditional model that we build, right, we've used our Redshift environment in terms of where we are. We use Dataiku in terms of modeling for our forecast that we've used. in that sense. But then again, when we talk about visualization, like you've heard about ClickSense today through the conference, it's a great visualization tool, but what lacked is the ability to have a dynamic write-back tables where we could involve the users not just looking at the forecast, but playing around with it in terms of scenarios, version controls, right? So we've partnered with vendors who work with Click to provide that write-back capability for us to do that. There are several tools, but within our domain, how effectively we could do that is something that we've leveraged to create. So again, there's Wizlib that we use as a library on top of ClickSense to provide that write-back capability with our users. And again, just engaging with these users, the adoption piece was so key for us, having them involved in every part of this journey in terms of decision-making for data modeling also, have the business user in there to say that, hey, what do you think about it, right? What are these assumptions, inputs, how are they going to change throughout the time? This was really helpful in terms of a successful implementation of this project for us so far. And again, it's work in progress, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I could add a little bit to that. So I think in our process of trying to initially identify a platform that we could use to solve this challenge, we'd met with a number of different vendors and had an opportunity to look at a number of different tools. You know, Jonathan's kind of
I'm
smiling.
just trying to, how many, I think we're up to a dozen now.
Yeah, it's. But the one thing we've realized is that it's a very difficult problem to solve and to solve well that addresses all three personas quite comfortably and accurately. We were able to get in touch with a group from Redbird, I think they were called, and their demo stands out to me because they used an agentic framework to try to make all the personas comfortable. But what we realized is whatever tool you're trying to look for has to match the maturity level of your organization. That tool would have been way too advanced as a tool to bring in for our business users, for example, to be able to latch on and understand how to navigate that tool. Now, us on the technology side or on the business technology side, let's say, that would have been a fantastic tool for us. I mean, we understand the technology, we understand how it moves, how it works, but thinking about that third persona sort of allowed us to press the brakes a little bit and say, great tool for us, would it necessarily work for the rest of the organization for us to be able to play together in that space? So that's one experience that really speaks to me.
And I can speak more on the second and the third persona. We are a global organization. Like we span across different locations across the globe. When we experience like working in our forecasting programs, is we may use one system like Dataiku when we go to Click. Asia Pacific may use something like Alteryx and go towards Tableau. We are, as an organization, we are not common ground. Like, so looking for that platform, we need to find that common ground to make sure that we provide to our business users that global capacity for us. So that's a really good strength for us, and that's really part of our platform search as well.
Well, that was a big understanding, right? That, so having come from AWS, right, where we're a very international organization, and to J&J, which, yes, we're still an international organization, but very compartmentalized, right, in terms of how we work. Big learning, right? In fact, our whole initiative around the driverless forecasting piece was we discovered there's a data science team in the UK that's already doing the same modeling that we're doing. So we're just like, now we don't necessarily need to worry about, we checked the models to make sure that they went against some of the pilots that we were running, and like the numbers were like within 99.99% accuracy or similarity. Wow. So like, why would we reduplicate that work, right? Let's just leverage that work. So then it kind of shifted the priorities. How do we get that data in? But the one thing that we started to we kept realizing, I was in a meeting with the very first team was our PLAT team, which is one of the earlier medicines, which has a very stable kind of market here within Canada. And we were at one of the meetings around the Christmas time this year, and they said that's Jonathan's model. I'm like, whoa, hang on, it's not my model. I said, it's the model that we've created to help you with your business, right? But you still need to own that model. And so that's why I said, okay, wait a minute, guys, there's a challenge here that we have to make sure that we're fully aware of. If people are going to adopt the model and start using the model, that's one thing, right? It makes their job easier, everything like that. But then if they're not going to be responsible, if they're not going to own it and own the results, and as soon as something doesn't sit right in the model's only as good as the historical data that's feeding it, right? And so therefore, if some kind of event, and who's going to have that, that future-looking event? Well, it's going to be the humans, right? So again, we're bringing back in that augmented intelligence. We could do stuff with the artificial intelligence, but it needs to be augmented, and we need to make sure that those business users, right, are absolutely engaged in it.
Absolutely.
Before we go to the closing comments, any other kind of reflections on the process? So where would you say where we're at? And I think what's the biggest opportunity that we have facing forward?
You want to go first?
Sure, I think for us, just the continuous training for our users, I would just stick to that persona of business users, is what's critical for us. And I think that's important to do, I think, in terms of not just putting an end to it, right? The project is done, but having that continuous training in terms of educating them in terms of how the workflows goes and how the insights are generated through the models. I think that's a key piece in the change management process. Yeah.
Any other reflections?
Yeah, I'll say one reflection that I can think of right now is, as we have thought about this tool that we want to bring in and the complexities that are involved in bringing it in, understanding where everybody sits with their challenges and their pinpoints and trying to address everything. Maybe we don't have to address every single thing. Maybe there is some sort of Venn diagram confluence somewhere where we can address 80% of everybody's needs, and that 80% sort of dovetails well with the overall organizational strategy, and maybe that's what we move forward with. There's also opportunities to maybe leverage some of the things that we already have in-house, like different tools, and see if we can stitch those tools together in some way to provide an answer, even if it's not scalable, at least see what we can do in the meantime.
Well, that was one of the reflections for me too, right? Is that when we start to investigate some of these solutions, and if you go down the path saying, "Hey, this looks like a really good solution," and say, "Okay, that is going to cost you whatever $500,000 a year."
Right.
Whoa, hang on. Okay, we can't necessarily afford that this year, right? So I think how does that? And again, how do I need to demonstrate? Because my role to demonstrate that value of that investment to the organization. And I think that so Josh and I were hosting a session coming up in about another month from now, right? And it's basically, it's a playbook, right? It's just sitting down with the people, with the business users to say, here's how we envision you interacting with this model. How do you envision interacting with your model? And I think the other thing that you brought to my attention on it with that last comment was, just because, we've created all these algorithms now, and this is still work that I'm asking you about all the time, what's it going to take to maintain them? Right? And then where are the resources to maintain them? And so are we just simply shifting resources from, hopefully there's a gain there in terms of efficiency, saying, okay, yes, before, marketers used to spend X number of hours, now we're able to automate it, and, we can maintain this with, a significantly reduced number of hours from the data and analytics team and stuff like that.
And we are presenting it to many different people within those three personas, but I'm sure many of you guys may be working in similar platforms such as in your organization, but just remember, you can't please everybody. There's too much data, and there's too many cooks in the kitchen as well. So you just need to look at your overall strategy, and that's definitely like my reflection. You can't please everybody.
Well, and that'll come back to classic change management, right? Like, the old hockey stick where you're going to have some people who are going to adopt it right away, and you're going to have like the attrition, and then you're going to have the people who are going to hold out, right? And then we got to think about whether we use the hockey stick in a different version. Anything else? No? Okay. Well, here, I'll go to the takeaways, because this is the takeaways for me, right? So again, it's not fast. We've been doing this process now for about 6 months. Would have loved to say we could see one or two and say, yep, that's our tool. But unfortunately, that was not the case. It's not easy, and it's not cheap, right? I guess it's your classical any kind of business paradigm. If you want one or the other, you're going to have to sacrifice the other two. So really, our takeaway to you as an actual thing, and maybe it's not that big of an aha moment, but truly it is. Like, spend the time to really understand and develop the personas. Our organization happened to have 3, right? As we alluded to, there's variation within those 3s, but for the most part, those 3 types of personas would really represent our data and analytics strategy, in terms of what we need for this forecasting initiative. Your organization might have 4, it might have 5, right? Or it might have 2. So I think but spend the time and resources and engage with those personas as you bring these solutions to life. And that's the question, is like, how do we involve everybody? And it's not necessarily easy. It's funny, because I had one of the business unit directors who were kind of responsible for complete oversight come to me the other day saying, hey, I heard that you're doing this. And I was like, oh yeah, I forgot to mention that to you. But what happened was, I had mentioned it to their VP, right? So the executives were all briefed. She took the presentation, unbeknownst to me, and sent it off to her team saying, by the way, here's what's going on, right? And so it kind of blindsided me, which is okay. We're a very good organization. We could work together in terms of being able to do it, but we obviously recognize, oops, I missed that, right? So we learned that. Like, make sure that we have a really comprehensive change management plan. And again, it's not one perfect fit. It's probably, like you said, a Venn diagram. It's probably 80% we can make people happy with it all, but it's not going to be 100%, and we recognize that now. And then again, investing to totally understand the current environment you have. Like, what are other organizations, or other areas of your organizations, what are other geographical areas of your organization doing? And then what tools we have. We heard that earlier from Click, saying like, you know what, all you have to do is upgrade to the cloud version, and boom, you're up into the AI world, right? And so almost every other tool that we have, I think that's what I'm kind of, so is one of the other sessions somebody asked me, like, how do you future-proof your organization? I'm like, I don't think you can future-proof your organization.
Not anymore.
Because it's changing faster than we can, right? But sessions like this and learnings like this will definitely help us all be more prepared for the future. And then finally, make sure that you do demonstrate the value, right? That you go back to the organization and say, here's why we do these things, and this is why you want to invest in our team, and here's the value for the organization. And hopefully you can be very clear in being able to demonstrate that value back. So I'll stop there. Any questions, thoughts, comments, reflections?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The question is abstraction done about your role and responsibilities. How is about the chemistry between each other under the leadership of your boss?
Go ahead.
You can take that better, yeah, I think. Yeah. You can explain more.
So about their roles, specific to me, or?
I think your interactions with the LT and specifically,
So
Yeah.
I'm like, it's funny. So I was somebody asking, and I said that's why I called them the experts, right? These guys are the experts. I do not have the expertise of any one of these three gentlemen. I don't even have a combined knowledge of the three of them. And there's other people, team members here too, like Zoran, who's also a brilliant analyst who works on our team as well too. And so I think it's recognizing people's strengths, right? Bringing them together. This is kind of like a newly formed team. Like so, when I inherited the organization role that I had, or when I joined the organization, I saw an opportunity to say, okay, you know what? These two types of functions and groups within my division actually work better together than these other two. And so I kind of split my team into what we call operational analytics and what we call strategic analytics. Yep. That's a very blunt way of doing it, right? But so I restructured a little bit. But that's what it was about, was recognizing people's talents and strengths and then breaking down the barriers. Saying like, you know what, if you've got skills, so I think like your title was data and infrastructure, right? Or something like that.
Yep.
But he's a brilliant modeler, a brilliant coder, right? So like, why would I like bottle that up and say like, just because your title is this, doesn't mean you have to stay in that swim lane, right? We have to respect each other's swim lanes, but really creating that environment where we can all work together collaboratively. And then my conversation is with the LT is trying to get the buy-in, say here's why we need to be able to do this, to demonstrate the value, and then also saying hold off and wait, because you know what, give us time to do this, we want to do it right, because if it was up to the CFO, we would simply, like we showed him some of the numbers, and he was like, okay, implement it tomorrow. Everyone's going to driverless models, right, and that's it. I'm like, okay, you do that, you're going to alienate all your marketers, right, so let's be careful how we do that.
Yeah.
Does that answer?
Yeah. Just want to add to that. We've got smaller, leaner teams, so that's where we juggle between certain responsibilities at times there. But again, when it comes to our stakeholders, like the intention for a business user is not to be a data scientist in a way, but to, the goal is to transform the data for them to, have a natural extension of understanding in a way in their language so that they can make the decision. So I think we juggle those roles and help them out in different ways in that sense. Yeah.
Great. Any other thoughts, comments, closing remarks?
Yeah.
Hi. You guys talked a lot about finding common ground, whether it's between different personas or different branches of a global organization. I think oftentimes the need for common ground isn't recognized until things have already diverged quite a bit. So I wanted to ask, what's a good starting point for finding common ground and having that discussion?
I think it's aligning on, and I'll let you guys, but aligning on what do we want, right? What's the one thing that we want to be able to do with this? And so for our aspect, it was like we wanted to be able to gain efficiencies through data and modeling that will help people do their job. So I saw people every month struggling in Excel, right? And they were frustrated with the models. And every time that they wanted to update their model, they had to go to an external agency to be able to do that because we just didn't have the resources to update, decade-old Excel models. And so it was about saying, okay, we all know that you want to have a better model. We know you want to have a newer model. We can't build it in Excel. We could, but we're not going to build it in Excel. If we do this, right, we build it in a more complex environment, then this will get us to where we will be able to update your model, but then it's going to happen is you're going to have to relinquish some control over the model, right? And then we're going to be the ones controlling that, but we want to work with you to be able to do that. So being able to find that kind of blaring light in the back of the room that's looking at me and say, okay, that's where we want to head to together. Now, how do we get there, right?
I can also speak a bit on that. So like finding common ground, it's typically, again, going back to our large organization, if you're in a smaller scale team, usually when you're given something, you're usually like, I'm going to do it. That's my task. But in our projects and in our platforms, we realized before doing that, who else has worked on this? Because there's different countries that have worked on this. There's different sectors that have worked on this. It's easier for us to ask first before actually doing work. Because you don't want to do work that someone else has already done. And then you really have to ask. That's the biggest part. And so don't do work, ask first.
Yeah, I think there's a sweet spot to start with in terms of defining what that common ground is based on the strategic goals or the problem that we're trying to solve. We've seen that midway, they'd be like, sure, great model, we don't have to do anything in terms of maintaining it. But if we have to change it, we have to come to you again and again, what you could do in terms of providing us that control. That's another layer that we added again. We're like, okay, what's the common ground midway in terms of what we want to do next to that, right? So we have to reiterate again, but we start where in terms of what's the strategic goal we're trying to solve here, revenue, resourcing, right, accurate modeling, et cetera. We have that in place. As Josh said, look out J&J Global, what's been going on in terms of feedback, et cetera, and then provide a solution in that sense, yeah.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that to say, if you don't have a connectivity muscle, a muscle that forces you to get out there and just ask questions of people and don't care what they think about you or you're gonna have to develop that quickly, pronto, with everything that's coming. Yeah. Like, because it used to be that analysts and technical people would really just kind of zone in and sort of heads down and just do their thing. That's not gonna happen. That can't happen anymore. You just gotta get out there, ask questions, connect, form relationships, get people comfortable with you, and try to get answers that way. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jonathan and team. Please give them a round of applause.
Thank you.
That was an amazing session.
Thank you.
Thanks to the three personas out here. It was absolutely amazing, and I have so many questions I'm going to come back to after the session. Okay, and with that, we have actually ended our day, so it has been an absolutely amazing day. From the rise of agentic AI to powerful monetization frameworks and real-time analytics, it has been an incredible exchange of ideas, insights, and just a community discussion. Just a few highlights that I took away from the sessions today. Laurie reminded us that people are still at the heart of AI. Remember to walk before you run. We can use AI to grant wishes. Build trust before building AI. And finally, we know now how to connect coders and non-coders for business analytics. So thank you so much. And if you've missed any content, don't worry. I know we had different tracks. It will be available on the event app within a week. Thanks for your curiosity, engagement, and energy. And honestly, thanks for your interactive questions and all your energy out here. Without that, this speaker session or anything would not have been as exciting as it was today. And finally, let's let loose, and we have a cocktail reception, so we're going to be serving some drinks and just have a good conversation with each other, connect, network. This is the most important time. We are here to network, to build that community, join, put each other on LinkedIn. And finally, I just want to say I'll see you all bright and early tomorrow. And if you've not filled out that survey, please do so, because it will help us make this event even better and give you an even better experience for next year. So thank you so much, everyone. And thank you, team. And have a lovely evening. See you tomorrow.